We moved into my home when my daughter was 2 months old. Our neighbors were already showing signs of being a handful. They initially kept parking all of their vehicles, a huge truck, a Jeep, and a motorcycle, on our driveway and taking up the entire space. We hoped that once they realized the driveway wasn't vacant and that someone had moved in, that they would naturally stop. And they did, sort of. The guy living next door kept driving down it on the motorcycle, and he would park it in the middle of the driveway still. Most of the time he was gone before my husband and I got home, so there wasn't a confrontation. But when my husband had to deploy and I broke my leg, our car sat vacant in the driveway, unmoving. As soon as the neighbors realized this, they just started using it as if it were their own again. He even parked his truck and used our driveway to change out his lifted tires. This went on for 3 months until I was well enough to walk up the steps and talk to them. I'm 5 feet 2 inches, and this guy towers over me. I don't know how to explain it, but everything about his body language tells me this guy is dangerous. The way he walks and moves and wears his clothes, he gives me time served in jail vibes, though he was probably somebody's bitch, or at the very least hothead. So I was nervous and polite but firm. I said, "I need you to move your motorcycle off my driveway. This is not a shared space, it's private property." I hoped that would be the end of it. Of course it wasn't. He never really stopped. That wasn't the worst of it either. They live on the top unit of their house, it's a condo, and leave their trash can open at the bottom of their steps, same side as my driveway. They drop down the whole week's worth of trash into the trash can below, and don't bother to clean up the mess they make. Initially they left it open for the bugs and the animals to be attracted to. One day I came home with my daughter, while my husband was still deployed, and I got swarmed horror movies style by all the bugs from their trash can. I was scared. I know it's silly to be scared of bugs, but I was worried they would bite my daughter, and they did. We both got inside covered in welts on our arms and the back of our necks and our faces. We both have overreactive skin when we get bites, so they become big, round, red welts. It wasn't the first time, but it was the worst. I decided to message the property manager. The whole property was trashed and was the obvious cause of a lot of the mosquitoes. They have a sign outside their house that says "Managed by." I texted that number and let her know what was going on and sent pictures. It was a weekend, about 7 or 8 a.m., and I didn't know it wasn't a business number. The woman was extremely offended that I messaged her early and on a weekend. She seemed so angered by it that it was obvious she wasn't going to help. I asked her if I could have the landlord's number. Big mistake. She isn't just managing the property, she owns it. That's not what the sign outside said, but that was enough to shut down all communication with her. She did mention it to my neighbors, and they did start to close their trash can lids, but I could tell that however she worded it to them, I was the problem, and she didn't really care how much of a nuisance they were. She also included the downstairs neighbors that had just moved in the text, and from then on they gave me dirty looks too. I had specifically mentioned that I had not seen them contributing to the trash accumulation, but it didn't really matter. I was making a name for myself with my neighbors, and it wasn't good. Then the summer months came, and my husband came home, and the upstairs neighbors' kids began playing outside more. Initially I had a soft spot for them. We don't live in a cul-de-sac, and people drive fast down our street. I worried about them from far away, and considered talking to the city to get permission to paint a hopscotch pad out on the sidewalk out front, and build a free library they could enjoy. There's a blind spot when you first turn into my driveway, and one day the kids were on it, and I turned in. I was probably 10 feet away from them with my car, but it felt closer. Some of these kids are really small. When I got out of my car, I asked them politely not to play in my driveway, that it's not safe. They kind of got bashful, because they were little, and agreed and zipped off to the front of the houses. But from then on they ramped up. It was like we had become the Boo Radley of the neighborhood. They threw toys that hit our windows and doors, started walking up to our house in the dark and sitting on our back porch, like at 10 p.m. Then one day, encouraged by the eldest child who is 14, they broke a cinder block with a sledgehammer and threw the pieces at our house and windows. The worst things always seemed to happen when my husband was away on the ship overnight. Maybe they would see the car was gone and feel emboldened. I went outside and told the kids to get off my property, or I would call the cops. The eldest said, "Do it." What are they going to do? We're kids. It's a driveway, get over it. So I called the cops. I had them properly tell the neighbors where the property line was, and that we would start legal proceedings should they continue to trespass. I got more colorful no trespassing signs at the recommendation of the officer. I did this 3 or so times, and it became apparent that the police weren't really going to help. They said we had to file a civil case with the courthouse, but couldn't tell us the names of the adults in the home for us to file the claim. Otherwise, they said that unless the neighbors were actively on our property when they pulled up, that they couldn't even issue a citation, even with video evidence from our cameras. I watched the children gather up the chunks of brick that they had thrown at our house, and they began to throw it at the downstairs neighbor's dog. At first I saw them throwing it where the dog usually was, but I couldn't see if the dog was there, and I hoped that he was away. But then one day I caught movement on my camera, and I knew for sure that the dog was getting rocks thrown at it. I contacted animal control, and they got a hold of the downstairs neighbors who weren't home at the time. The downstairs neighbor came over, and I told her I wasn't trying to be a menace neighbor, that I don't hate kids, and that I had noticed her kid was the most well-mannered of the bunch, which is true, and I showed her the video. We exchanged numbers. I wish I could say we found common ground and became friends or something, but the woman has to live with those upstairs neighbors, and I get the feeling she is just trying to stay in neutral ground, which I totally respect. The rocks stopped getting thrown at the dog, but we didn't talk much after that. She asked a few weeks later if I saw who stole her son's bike, and I looked through my cameras and hadn't caught it. Otherwise, we didn't talk. The kids would twerk or flip off our cameras and continue to trespass. The whole family was still littering all over the driveway, and the father intentionally revved his motorcycle as he would go down it every other day, sometimes inches from our vehicle. We scrimped and saved for a fence, and once we had most of the materials, applied for a permit from the city. We were recently gifted a lawnmower, and my husband has been spending more time doing yard work. Yesterday, the man next door blatantly went down the driveway while my husband was there, and narrowly missed him with his motorcycle, probably on purpose. Angry words ensued, and the man got off his motorcycle, still parked in our driveway, and we finally found out his logic. The reason he feels entitled to our driveway. He said that it's a driveway and he's not hurting it or us by going down it. My husband said he's breaking the law by trespassing, and his kids have thrown rocks at our house. Harm is being done. The man said that his kids throwing rocks and him going down our driveway are separate issues. My husband said, "You're a family, it's not separate." Then the man's magnum opus of a statement. The reason he does what he does is because his landlord screwed him over and made him share the driveway with his downstairs neighbors, so we should have to share ours. The man egged us to call the police. But at this point, we had the permit processed, we had the fence panels. My husband laughed at him and said we have our own solution. So 3 or so hours later, the man comes home to my husband putting up fence posts. They stand on their balcony as my husband works and whisper to each other, but my husband can hear them. The man says that F******, or that's probably not even the correct line. And the woman says it is, because we have a survey and the police told them where the line was. The man says it's not even that big of a deal. The best part is, it's going to be a beautiful fence.